Good afternoon. I want to welcome everyone to the March 8th Grants Commission meeting for the City of Roseville. And calling the meeting to order, we'll go ahead and have our clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Acosta?
Here.
Chair Carroll?
Here.
Vice Chair Gibson?
Here.
Commissioner Haywood?
Here.
Commissioner Lung?
Here.
Commissioner Perez?
Here.
Commissioner Reed?
Here.
And we have absent is Commissioner Kriz.
Okay, thank you. I'd invite you all to stand up and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So the next item on our agenda is for public comments, and that is for items that are not on our actual meeting agenda. Does anyone have any public comments at this time?
Good afternoon. I'm Judy Gavia from the Tuttle Connection. I came here simply for one thing, and that is to thank you for the work that you guys are doing. We don't take for granted anything that comes to us, and we know the amount of work that goes into the decisions that you're making. We wanted to let you know that the grant that we were able to receive last year single-handedly kept us open. We had a very, very difficult time getting flowers from growers and from stores and from floral shops, and there were no events, of course, to speak of. But they just didn't have employees to pick the flowers, to service the flowers and process them so that they could get them to us. So our grower row that we were able to start because of the grant really single-handedly kept us open. So I just wanted to take a moment before you got started to let you know how very, very grateful we are and how much we appreciate you and the work that you do. Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any other public comments, so we'll go ahead and close public comments. And we're ready to go over the minutes. So we have our minutes from the January 4th meeting. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to look those over. We can take a few minutes now to do that. And when you guys are ready, I'll entertain a motion to either approve or amend as needed.
Commissioner Haywood make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Commissioner Perez, second.
Okay, it has been moved by Commissioner Haywood and seconded by Commissioner Perez to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you. Our next item is presentation reviews, action items, and we are going to go into a discussion of scoring methodology. So we do have a PowerPoint, so those watching or here can see. So just a couple things. This should be fairly quick, but we do have a few things that we wanted to discuss as a commission, but just to kind of walk through and remind people, since this is our second year now, doing kind of a slightly different approach to how we're reviewing the applications and scoring. So what our plan is, and this again is continuing what we did last year, is we have three different funding priority groups. The three that you can see listed here: strategic, operational, or small grants, 10,000 or less. So, and as an attachment, and I think there'll be a slide on here later, we have, since the grant applications have closed, we've reviewed, staff actually, thank you, has reviewed all the applications. And so they're grouped in these three categories, and we'll see the specific groups a little bit later. So the groups we have are these three, and then what we'll do when we're doing our scoring, we can go to the next slide there. We will want, when we go into Zoom grants, to look at every application and score every application unless you're abstaining. And if you are abstaining, or maybe I should say, if you have questions about whether you should abstain or recuse yourself, you can talk to Jonathan Levy, the attorney. But if you are recusing yourself, you should not score. Otherwise, regardless of how you feel about the application, you should be scoring everything. We're using our 0 to 100 point scale, and we have the questions associated with that, and that's in the Zoom grants as well. So you'll assign point values based on the questions, total them up, and that will be the score for each group. And then within each group, strategic, operational, 10,000 or less, you'll rank them. So that's what this is illustrating. So you've got the score. You also recommend a funding amount, could be full funding, zero funding, or something in between, and then you will rank them based on your score. Then we'll take that ranking, and then we'll combine all the different, so the C's across the top here, the different commissioners' rankings as just an illustration here. We'll combine all of those to come up with an average ranking, and when we meet back again, that will all be sorted out. Our staff will help us with that. We have a spreadsheet that pulls all that together. And so then we'll be looking at each priority group based on the rankings. So we can keep moving unless anyone has questions. Hopefully you guys are following. And okay. All right, we can do the next slide. So we'll get an average ranking. We'll come up with we know what the group requested for funds, and then we'll have cumulative total. I think last year we probably changed the wording on that, but basically it's the average proposed funding when we look at all the commissioners' scores and what they were recommending for funding. And then that will be the basis that we'll go through and look at the different applications and consider based on scoring and based on funding and our funds available, how we would go through and approve or not for the different applications. All right, I think, yeah. So this is now taking us through for the groups that did apply this year, who were qualified, who we have in which group. So this first group, the strategic one-time grants, there was only one organization that indicated they wanted to be considered under that priority group, and you can see there who it is. So in that one, there's just one application. And then the next category are the small requests. So we do have a number in here, and then you're seeing the total funds requested, and then as we go through the grand total, we have 277, I think it is, thousand. So when we're doing it, $277,913. So if you added the three groups together, you'll see that number is a little higher than what we have funds available. So when you're doing your funding recommendations, we'll want to make sure that what you're recommending adds to that grand total, regardless of how you're distributing it among the groups. So this is the applications for the small requests. And then the next one, I think it's actually broken over a couple, shows how the different groups that applied for operational missional support. You'll notice in red, that's not necessarily a negative, Lilliput Children's Services is requesting $5,000. So they did indicate they wanted to be considered under operational mission support. But one of the things we wanted to chat about tonight was, would it be better for them to move to the small requests? And I think they are a fairly new applicant. I don't remember if they've applied. I don't recall that they've been a regular applicant in the past that I've been on the commission. So something to think about, and then we can go to the next slide. I think it's 2 slides, yeah. So then you have the second half of the group that's applied for missional operation support. So the next one, I think, is just kind of reminding us about a couple things. So we'll talk about this, and then we kind of can open it up for discussion. So again, we want to score every application. Unless you're recusing or abstaining, you want to do a score for everything. Even if you're not recommending funding for them, you should still score them. You can have ties with your scores, but when you're doing the ranking, you do need to separate out and not have two groups tie. We want you to recommend funding for each applicant. And again, it could be full funding. No funding is acceptable. You should still have a score, or something in between. And then you'll see how that funding, when we do the averages across the commissioners, when we're evaluating in our meeting to discuss who gets funded. And if you are abstaining or recusing yourself, do not deduct funds for that applicant from the total. Your total should still equal the $277,913. And you'll be able to see that in Zoom grants as you're recommending funding levels. It'll do the totals for you. And There will be a form that Tricia sends out so we can put our rankings and scores and the funding recommendations on that form. You'll still do it in Zoom grants, but there will be a separate form that Tricia sends out that we'll all fill out and return to her, and that's the basis for doing their additional spreadsheet that calculates all these other things. So I think that's our last slide. Yep, okay. So I guess one question we wanted to discuss, well, maybe before we get into that, we just wanted to kind of clarify, we have that total amount of money. We don't have any set amount per funding priority group. In last year's, we did indicate that we wanted to kind of spread it across all three, and, we're considering the applicants based on their scores, knowing that we have one group where we only have one application. I think that would be something, whether we need to discuss that now or actually at our meeting where we are making decisions as to whether we feel we have to fund all three categories, knowing that in one case, if we make that commitment, we're automatically funding that one application. So something to think about. I think we want to consider things based on merit and how we evaluate the applications. And since we haven't gotten there yet, I think it would probably be premature to say we definitely have to fund each of the three priority groups, knowing that there's one with just one applicant. Okay. And then yeah, I think we could move, does anyone have any questions so far?
More of a comment question.
Sure.
Remind me, did we have any applicants that did not qualify?
We did have 2.
So there is a process for staff to pre-qualify.
Yes, so
How were they notified?
I emailed them.
Okay.
Yeah, so I emailed them letting them know that they had missing items, and unfortunately they did not reply, and so there were 2 applications that were disqualified. So we went from 30 applications to 28 that you'll be scoring. And I did make those, I disqualified them in Zoom grant, so it'll be obvious. You won't need to score those 2.
Yeah, when you see the list, you'll see which ones were disqualified, and if you try to go in to score them, it'll say you don't need to score it. So,
And for the group, Tricia made a really big effort, especially with new applicants, to give them the chance to get their stuff in and deadlines and everything. So thank you for doing all that homework. So there were 2 that did not qualify. Okay, I just didn't remember that.
okay. Any other questions or comments?
I have 2 questions, but I'm not sure if this is the time to ask them. So for the total funding, the recommended funding, when you're saying full, 0, or something in between, how do we determine, is there a criteria or a formula for how we determine what the something in between might be?
I think each commissioner kind of has their own.
Make our own judgment?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I don't know that we have any set guideline to say you can only do it at certain intervals, or you get points assigned based on this and it equals this amount.
Okay,
I think a helpful guide is making sure it makes sense with your ranking.
okay.
To me, for me, it wouldn't make sense if they were the last one
Right.
that ranked that I full funded them or something.
Correct.
I think there seems to be some mental correlation between the ranking and the funding amount,
Okay.
if that helps at all.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there was a rubric that we were following.
And staff will provide, I brought last year's just for reference, but an Excel spreadsheet, and there's a tab for each funding source. And when I think you see it
Okay.
filled in, it starts making sense to you as well. Like you might go, but once you see all the rankings together in one spreadsheet, it helps you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And then the other question that I had, if you're abstaining, how do you reflect that in Just Grants? So if we're not scoring because of exceptions, but we're supposed to not leave funds on the table, how does that work?
So, well, you still wouldn't leave the funds on the table, but there's a drop down in there where you approve, decline, or abstain.
Okay.
And also on the form that Tricia sends, there'd be a place where you can indicate that you're abstaining or recusing.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but you still want to use your $277,913 across all the groups
All
that you
the
are.
other ones that you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you are voting on.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Understood. Thank you.
Sure. Did you? I wasn't sure if you had a comment on her other.
I'm okay. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Good questions. Anything else?
Sorry. When are the awards going to be given for those other grant opportunities, the CBDG and the COVID?
CDBG, we are reviewing those now, and thank you, Chair and Vice Chair, for helping out. That was very, very generous of your time. So we are reviewing those, and we are going to be taking funding recommendations for both in, I believe it's the first meeting of April. It may be May. I apologize. It's probably May that we'll be making those.
Before we do ours, or it's running concurrently?
It'll run concurrently.
Same with the COVID? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Is just to clarify, our next meeting in April is the meeting where we're making the funding decisions, correct? Or recommendations, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. We did leave open possibility to meet in March, but we're not.
We are in
our
March.
Oh, so we are. I was going to say that the deadline that we have based on our schedule is April 1st to have everything, the form sent back to Tricia and all of our information and Zoom grants. So yeah, that's, it is March, isn't it? Yes. So we have the meeting booked in March. We also have one in April. In the past, it only took us one meeting. So I think that will be another item we can chat about if we want to still keep the April or move to May, or keep the April and know that if we don't need May, we don't need to meet in May. Before we get into those logistics though, I did want to talk about that one organization who applied for 5,000. What our feeling is on whether we should keep them where they are, or if we should move them to small.
I'm just going to confirm they are a new applicant. I believe they've only applied once, maybe twice at the most. So I based on my recollection of the last application, they definitely, or in my opinion, they're maybe not as familiar with our application process as some of the more experienced grantees. I think it would benefit them for us to consider moving them into the small grants, because I suspect they might have a better opportunity to be funded in that category than they would with the big grants.
I would concur, and that's why I wanted to bring it up. I mean, they did have the option to choose it, but if they didn't either understand the process or they felt like, well, this money is for operational missional support, so.
And they, yeah, I was going to say a big grant, big organization. So that was kind of maybe what I was thinking. They're thinking along the lines of being a bigger organization, so they wouldn't qualify under the small grants. So perhaps that's something we can clarify next year, that it could,
Your organization size isn't as much of a determinant as the request amount size. So what are other commissioners?
I would agree.
Okay, Ryan?
So has the organization been contacted about the change, or because the application deadline has already been passed, would that be up to us?
We haven't contacted them. I thought we would want to kind of chat about it here, and if there was consensus, or if there was interest and consensus to move them, then we probably would notify them. But I don't think as of right now there's been any.
I think that I'm in favor of moving them in this case, but the logic based on why we're moving them, I think, conflicts with the logic of having the one larger grant in the single bucket by itself. So I think just rolling forward, we should probably revisit our 3 buckets, maybe.
Okay. Well, and we would be moving them not to the one where there's just one.
Right.
We'd be moving them to the one where we have like 8 or so, I think, in there.
But based on the better chance, better opportunity, it's still not matching with the other logic. So in my opinion, I think we should revisit our buckets and make it more clear in the next one.
Yeah,
but
I think
I like the decisions so far. I just think there's an opportunity for clarification.
Can I just interrupt real quick? Does anyone know what the emergency assistance is? Because they the organization itself may consider that an operational mission support, which is why they applied in there. So I think we also need to consider that, which is also in a good segue from what Commissioner Perez said about the likelihood of somebody getting a grant. So perhaps I misspoke, but everyone has. Right now, it's a blank slate. We have no idea. We haven't looked at the applications. So I think that's something else that we need to consider if we're going to move them, because this could potentially open the door for issues in future years where organizations are trying to get around the organizational support and mission support and marking the box for small requests for some of the reasons that Commissioner Perez raised.
And I hear you, but I think and I don't know that we have it in detail right here, but in our original breakout of those three, the small request was really, it could go for missional support. It was just calling out those organizations that were requesting smaller amounts of money so they weren't necessarily competing with very large and more professional type organizations who have professional grant writers and things like that. So I don't think the fact that they're asking for something that's mission operational support is a disqualifier from moving to the small request category. It's just that the small request category gave us more flexibility for organizations who weren't asking for a lot, who might get lost in the bigger pool of funds, who don't have professional grant writers, whose project is not as,
Thank you
intense.
for that clarification, and I think that speaks to Commissioner Perez's
It does.
comment as well. Thank you. Sorry.
So, does anyone have any concerns with moving them? Or, and I think we could go either way, so I don't know. I think for us, trying to have some balance in the categories to the extent we can, and making sure each organization gets as much of an opportunity and consideration. And I don't think they wouldn't be considered if we left them where they were. I just think it keeps them in with similar groups with the funding amount.
Yeah, I would just add that we're not taking any action on anything tonight, so I would maybe frame this more as an administrative matter. And
Okay.
maybe we could reach out to them and ask for clarification about their intent. And if they suggest that maybe they were categorized in error by mistake, we make that clarification this time.
Okay.
But I don't want to open the door for other groups also asking for the same thing, to try to compete for different buckets for different reasons.
Okay.
So why don't we handle it on the administrative side?
Okay. So why don't we do this? Are there any concerns from the commission if staff handles this more as an administrative clarification with the group?
No. Jonathan's suggestion actually relays my concerns as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks. And since we didn't take action, there's no need to have any kind of motion. So the next thing I wanted to just clarify was meeting schedule. Is there anything else before we move on to that? Everyone is kind of...
Just a point of clarification,
Sure.
because I know that we had a pre-meeting, and I had requested this be in the communication that was sent out to you all, that the Citizens Benefit Fund was established in order to give annually to nonprofits for the purpose of improving quality of life for the citizens of Roseville. So when you're looking, a lot of these organizations cross over in cities and counties, and just keeping in that main objective of what the fund was generated from to serve Roseville, we felt we should point that out to especially the new folks.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Gibson. And the bulk of the funds, 99% probably of the funding is the Citizens Benefit Fund, which is focused on Roseville. There is the REACH funds, which extends out, but I think that's less than $2,000 of this.
Just over $1,700 this year.
No. Okay. All right. Then the only other thing I wanted to chat about was the meeting schedule. So our next slated meeting is April 12th. Again, April 1st, mark that on your calendar, on your phone, wherever, that is when we need to have the information completed in Zoom grants as well as the form sent back to Tricia. And at this point, Tricia will work with if there are any changes for the categories and then send us the form when that's ready, but probably in the next week or two. We can go in now and look at Zoom grants and start our process, though. You don't need to wait for Tricia to send you that form to start the process. So we can meet as planned on April 12th. And then if we need a second meeting, we have it in May, but if we don't, then we won't need to meet. That's even, it actually says continued if needed. So at this point, is there any objection to having our next regular meeting April 12th at 5:30 to start our review process? Okay. All right, well.
And just, again, a question, like I was never here before, right? For that meeting, we'll have staff's summary averaging all the scores and everything. So, okay.
All right. I don't know. Moving on to the next item, commissioner and staff reports. Are there any staff reports?
I don't really have much to say other than, I'm excited to, to get that document out to you. I will be sending everybody an email that has that attached with just a few little reminders and, a reminder of the date. If I don't hear from you, I will reach out again because I will only have 12 days between, receiving your information and preparing for the next meeting. And I know our secretary needs the information as well. So, looking forward to having our next meeting in April.
And we don't need to wait till April 1st. If you get it done sooner, feel free to.
Yes, that's a great point.
And I will say from some other experience, Zoom grants for the most part is fine, but there are weekend days where it will not let you in. So I would encourage you, don't wait till the weekend before. I don't remember what day April 1st is, but don't wait till the weekend before to try to cram it all in. Because if the system is locking you out and you can't get in, and their support, I don't know that is available on weekends, you're kind of stuck. So I strongly encourage you can go in, make notes, even if you don't want to score yet, at least familiarize yourself with the applications and, start working through the process early. All right.
I just wanted to clarify. So the grants are due for our scoring on April 1st, and is there a submission process for us to submit to our staff? Or is it automatically?
So there'll be an Excel document or Excel spreadsheet that Tricia will send, and you do need to email that back to her by April 1st. But the Zoom grants, once you put your information in there, you guys have access to that. Staff can see that, so you don't have to submit anything.
I have a general question for Zoom grants. I saw there's a box that says private comments. Is everything outside of that box public then, so we could all see it?
I don't know if it's public, but it is available to the commissioners.
Us,
yes, but public meaning I don't know if it's available to the general public, but yes, to other commissioners would be able to see.
Okay.
I've learned to keep my comments in the private comments.
Yes.
For the tip.
All right. Any other commissioner questions or comments or reports? Okay. Very good. All right. Well, I will entertain a motion to adjourn then until our April 12th meeting.
Commissioner Acosta moves to adjourn the meeting.
Okay. Is there a second?
Commissioner Reed, second.
Okay, thank you. It has been moved by Commissioner Acosta and seconded by Commissioner Reed that we adjourn. And I don't think we need any discussion. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all.